Hey everyone. The tragedy of Spike Lee, one of America's most visionary filmmakers, a man who redefined black storytelling in Hollywood, who turned cinema into protest, poetry, and prophecy, is a story as profound as any of his films, and it's beyond heartbreaking because it reveals what happens when genius collides with a system that loves the culture but refuses to fully embrace the creator. Spike Lee, born Shelton Jackson Lee in 1957 in Atlanta, Georgia, has always been a voice too bold for silence, too honest for comfort, and too authentic for an industry built on illusion. From the moment he stepped onto the filmmaking scene, he carried the spirit of a revolution. A young black artist armed not with weapons but with a camera, determined to force the world to look at what it didn't want to see. His early films like She's Gotta Have It, 1986, Do the Right Thing, 1989, Mo Better Blues, 1990, and Malcolm X, 1992, didn't just entertain. They educated, provoked, and challenged America's conscience. Spike Lee made films that spoke truth to power, films that held a mirror up to racism, hypocrisy, and the ongoing struggle of black identity in a country that both profits from and punishes black culture. But behind his genius, behind the accolades, the controversies, the Oscars, and the praise, lies a heartbreaking reality. That even after decades of groundbreaking work, Spike Lee still stands as both a celebrated icon and a misunderstood outcast in the very industry he helped to transform. From the beginning, Spike Lee's journey was a fight. Born to a jazz musician father, Bill Lee, and a schoolteacher mother, Jacqueline, Spike grew up surrounded by art, intellect, and black pride. His family valued education and expression, and from an early age, Spike saw storytelling as a way to understand and confront the world. He attended Morehouse College, a historically black institution that molded many civil rights leaders, where he first picked up a camera and began creating short films that tackled themes of race and community. His talent earned him a place at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, where his student film Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershop, We Cut Heads, won a Student Academy Award, signaling that a new voice had arrived. But what the world didn't yet realize was that Spike Lee wasn't just a filmmaker. He was a movement in motion. In 1986, Spike made his feature debut with She's Gotta Have It, a low-budget film shot in just 12 days with borrowed equipment. The film became a cultural phenomenon, grossing over $7 million on a $175,000 budget and putting Spike on the map. But more than that, it shattered stereotypes about black cinema, showing that black characters could be complex, funny, intellectual, and flawed, without being confined to Hollywood's tired tropes. Then came Do the Right Thing, the film that defined his career and set fire to America's comfort zone. Released in 1989, it was raw, explosive, and unapologetically honest. Set in a Brooklyn neighborhood simmering with racial tension, it forced viewers to confront the violence, inequality, and rage that were bubbling just beneath the surface of American life. When critics debated whether the film would incite riots, Spike Lee didn't back down. He simply pointed out that the real problem wasn't his film, but the racism his film exposed. But even as his artistry soared, the backlash began. The tragedy deepened as the years went on. While Spike's peers, directors like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Quentin Tarantino, were celebrated as cinematic geniuses with limitless freedom, Spike was often sidelined, his films scrutinized more harshly, his voice labeled too black, too political, too confrontational. He made masterpiece after masterpiece. Malcolm X, Clockers, Bamboozled, 25th Hour, Inside Man, Black Klansman, each one a cinematic reflection of America's soul. Yet time and again, awards bodies ignored him, studios underfunded him, and critics misinterpreted his art. It wasn't until 2019, over 3 decades into his career, that he finally won his first competitive Oscar. And even then, it felt bittersweet. Because the truth is, Spike Lee should have been celebrated as a national treasure decades earlier. Instead, he had to fight every step of the way just to be seen as equal. Behind the fame, Spike also endured personal heartbreak. His relationship with his father, the legendary jazz musician Bill Lee, became strained after years of creative and financial disagreements. Bill Lee had composed the music for many of Spike's early films but was eventually replaced, leading to years of silence between them. Spike rarely spoke publicly about the pain of that estrangement, but those close to him say it weighed heavily on his heart. Then came the deaths of friends and collaborators, giants of black culture who shaped his life. When Michael Jackson, Prince, and Chadwick Boseman passed, Spike's tributes were filled with sorrow and gratitude. But perhaps the most devastating loss came in 2023, when his father, Bill Lee, died at age 94. Spike's public statement was brief but heavy, a man mourning not only his father, but the closing of a lifelong chapter filled with both brilliance and regret. Even in success, Spike Lee has often been misunderstood. His films are dissected and debated more than celebrated. His outspokenness on racial injustice used to label him as divisive. Yet, through it all, he never stopped creating, never stopped telling stories that mattered. In an era when many artists play it safe, Spike continues to push boundaries, using his platform to speak on police brutality, systemic racism, and the commodification of black culture. But what makes his story truly heartbreaking is that for all his influence, Spike Lee still feels like a man fighting for the respect that should have long been his. The same Hollywood that built monuments to lesser men still struggles to embrace the full scope of his genius. In recent years, Spike has watched as younger black filmmakers, many of whom he inspired, have risen to acclaim. Directors like Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay, Jordan Peele, and Barry Jenkins all credit Spike as a trailblazer who kicked open the doors they now walk through. Yet, while they are celebrated, Spike remains the veteran warrior, revered but often overlooked, respected but not fully rewarded. It's a bittersweet legacy, to have changed the game and still be treated like a player. And perhaps that's the greatest tragedy of all, that the man who gave voice to an entire generation still has to shout to be heard. Through all the pain, Spike Lee remains defiant, still teaching at NYU, still directing films, still wearing his signature Knicks cap, and still reminding the world to do the right thing. But behind that fiery spirit lies a man who has carried the weight of cultural responsibility for nearly 40 years, a man who's seen his heroes die, his message diluted, and his art misunderstood. Yet he keeps going because he knows that if he doesn't tell these stories, no one will. The tragedy of Spike Lee isn't that he failed, it's that America failed him, failed to fully honor one of its greatest storytellers while he was still here to feel it. And so, as we look back at his extraordinary life, we're forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Spike Lee gave us his voice, his vision, and his vulnerability. But what did we give him in return? Respect? Yes, but not enough. Recognition? Yes, but far too late. His legacy is undeniable, but the pain behind it is real. Spike Lee's story is a reminder that being a pioneer often means walking alone, that telling the truth in a world built on lies comes at a price. He remains a living legend, brilliant, uncompromising, and heartbreakingly human, still fighting not for fame, but for justice. The tragedy of Spike Lee isn't the fall of a man, but the failure of a system that could never see him as more than a black filmmaker, when in truth, he has always been one of the greatest filmmakers the world has ever known. Thanks for watching.